Hello everyone. So in this video, I'm gonna show you how you can connect to a remote WSO2 Micro Integrator server using WSO2 Integration Studio. Of course, for this functionality, you need the Integration Studio. So let me start Integration Studio for that. So I have this version 8.2.0 installed in my machine, so I'm starting that. And in fact, for this functionality, you need 8.2.0 as well, and there needs to be an update installed to have this function working properly as well. So let's first launch the Integration Studio, and you can download the Integration Studio using WSO2.com. If you go to the product section, you will see multiple product types in WSO2, and you can click on the micro integrator and then click on the downloads button, where it will ask your details about how to download WSO2 and so forth. And you can download the zip archive, and also on the other component section you can download the integration studio. So I have already downloaded it. So when you first download and run it, it will ask for your workbench location. So you can give any folder location for that. And in my case, I have it in the default location. So now I have the Integration Studio started. So let's add a server. So when you see the Integration Studio, initially you will see a lot of samples already provided. So you can get started from one of these places. For example, if you want to start with the Hello World service, you can click and the on-screen instructions will guide you on how to create a project of that type and so forth. Right? I already have a project created out of these developer samples hello world. So this is what it is, and basically once you have it, you will see an ESB config type of project and a composite archive type of project. So once you have this, there are multiple ways that you can do the deployment, at the development time, of course, right? So doing the deployment through the Integration Studio, usually you do it during the development time. During the production time, you don't normally use this method, so there are other ways of doing that in your deployment. Specifically, deploying to the deployment directory is a common approach. Right, so now once you have this composite archive project, now we want to take this to our server while you are developing. So that server could be running locally or remotely. Locally means it could be running in your machine or it could be running somewhere else, right? And so during the development time, this Integration Studio's embedded micro integrator instance can also be used, and that's one way of doing it. To do that, you can right click and you can just say export project artifact and run, and then you see the configure embedded micro integrator server type here, where you can add configurations specific to your uh, application, whatever you are doing there. So in my case, I don't have anything like that, so I can just go on doing the initial deployment, and you will see in the console section that the embedded micro integrator starts fine, and you see the details of your available services, available REST APIs and other artifacts. Now in my case, I have this hello world, so let me copy this and let's call this and see if it works fine. And I'm going to use curl to do that. So let me use curl. You can use the get method and then this, and yeah, so it says curl not found. Okay, so let's run that again. I don't know exactly what went wrong there. It's the same command that I'm running down here. So anyway, so curl, it seems to be some other glitch in the operating system with the curl. So the curl now returns the expected response. And there is also another service here, as you can see. We can maybe call that also and see what happens. So let me just use that URL, and yeah, it responds back with an XML. So previous one is a JSON and this one is an XML. Okay, so that's how you will run a composite application in a locally running or the embedded micro integrated instance, and you can stop from here. But you can also run your micro integrator from the command line somewhere else running in a remote machine. So I'm running it in my local machine, but you can consider this as a remote instance. You can also add this particular instance as a server locally as well. So this option, you can find it here when you go to add server section on your getting started page under WSO2. You can say enterprise integrator 4.2. So then you can say server's host name is basically the local host, and I can say test mi 420, and I can go to next section. So it's basically asking me for the URI, and runtime is the micro integrator, and I need to provide my carbon home directory. So carbon home directory is basically my, let's say I want to go here, so the parent directory here. So I'll be adding that. Let's go here and specify that URL here, or you can browse it from your file navigator as well. And then I can say finished. And when you do that, you will see whatever the existing applications. Now you see the test mi, your servers you have already added before. You will see that. Otherwise, if this is the first time that you are doing this, you will only see what you just added. So you can right click this, and when you click this, you see other options here. So you can just click start there. It will basically start your micro integrator, and basically what it's starting here is your locally configured server. So now you have it started, and obviously in this server instance, well, it looks like it is already there in that, but let's see why. So let's peek into our deployment directory. As you may know that in Micro Integrator, WSO2 Micro Integrator, the deployment directory is WSO2 Home, Repository Deployment Server, Carbon apps. So if I just list the files in there, the composite archive seems to be there, so that's why it's returning. So let's first remove that, and so once we remove it, it shouldn't be there. So of course, in that case, this call should fail. Yeah, now it fails because it takes a few seconds to do the undeployment. So it's not there now. And now how do we do the deployment? Now we can do the deployment from here itself. Now, if I just right click here, you see this option of add and remove, right? And if I just do add and remove, whatever composite application archive that it can find in the workspace will be listed there, and I can click next and then do the deployment. So when I do the deployment, it should become available. So if you just expand this, you will see the files synchronized. So you see the deployment just happened, and if I just go and call this thing, you should get the call. And also the JSON one that I previously used will also be there. So that particular example is about how to add a server which is running locally. Again, it's an option to add a server which is running locally. Um, and you gave the carbon home directory. You can only do that if it's running locally. So let's see how to add a server which is running remotely and then manipulate our carbon application that's running in there. So let's first stop this. And to do that, you need to add a server. But as I previously mentioned, for this option, if you add the remote server, you will find a section called remote server section here. And I'm going to say server name test remote 420. Before I come here, I need to mention something. Let's just say here. So server host name, I'm going to run my server locally. Yes, it's running locally, but I'm going to connect via the remote server option. So that means when you're running your server somewhere else, your host name is going to be whatever applicable host name where your server is running. So I'm not running it in a remote server in a true sense. It's actually running in my local host, but I'm trying to connect through this remote server option. So when I click next, you see these options: enterprise integrator and the micro integrator. So that's because previously the micro integrator was called enterprise integrator, and there are few still supported versions available, and in future enterprise integrator will be deprecated and it will be micro integrator. You won't see this option. And you will only see these two options in the 820 version that I just downloaded. And if you're using the 810 version, for example, if you go and look into your uh, about Integration Studio, if you see 810, this will not be there. And 820 is what you need to download. And once you download it, you also need to update it. Check for updates. And because this functionality has been recently improved and so forth. So you need to take that update to successfully connect to a remote server. So I have already updated, so I don't need that option. So let's go add a new server. Okay, so looks like my update is running. So let's wait for that. Okay, so I stopped the upgrade, so update. So let's add my server. So I'm going to go here. And as I mentioned, so localhost is my host name, and I'm going to select the remote server option and then use my test remote 420 name that I tried to use earlier. And here I need to use, because I'm using micro integrator, you need to use this particular URL. So let's put that HTTPS. This is localhost 9164 slash management. So obviously you will not be using localhost if you're running this remote server in a actual remote server. Then you will be using the relevant host name there, and you can do your test. Okay, so when I do the test, it gives me the failure because my remote server, so-called remote server, is not running. So I need to run it now. So let's make this this way. So let me also first initially remove uh, the carbon application so you don't find anything there. And what I can do is I'm inside the micro integrator 420 version, and I'm going into the bin directory, and then let's start it. So I'm starting the server in the foreground. So otherwise you can start it in the background. I am starting it in my local machine, and the server is now started. So it just says you have two listeners here, the HTTP and HTTPS listener, so 829.0.8.253 port. So now we have it. So let's go back to our server and test the connection. And obviously, in this case, the connection should be successful. And your username and password is the default ones, and it should work. So when I go to next, you can add the the composite applications at the time of your remote server setup itself, but I happen to find an issue there. So when I just click edit, it doesn't actually edit at the time of adding your remote server in your it seems to be an issue, so which needs to be fixed. But let's just go and see that if it is the case, and if it uh, adds well, fine. So let's go OK, and this is test mi420. No, so basically, so test remote one. And as you can see, test remote one, it says the survey started and the details are synchronized. So it doesn't show me as synchronized. So see, the application doesn't get deployed here. So when I go list it here, I still don't see it. So obviously, if you make the let's try to make that curl request again, and obviously it won't be there. So let's do the deployment now again. So to do that, what you have to do is right click again, add remove. Here it does show it as available, so I need to take it back and then edit again. So let's first remove it, and then remove it, and then say finished. And in your remote server again, I'll click this and add it. Hopefully it should work. And now it says synchronized. Going to my console now, I see the file is deployed. And now let's run the hello world, and obviously you should see the response coming back. So this is a short video on how to manage your either locally running micro integrator instance or remotely running micro integrator instance, and doing the deployment and so forth. But remember, in general, this is done during development time only, and when it comes to real production type of deployments, you don't rely on the integration studio. Integration studio is just for the developers, and you rely on other mechanisms, and may even go to things like proper CI/CD, where you will have your source code hosted in a GitHub, and your CI/CD pipelines will take that, build it, and then take your composite applications to the relevant deployment directory, such as this directory. And that's how you will be doing it. And so I'll see you in another similar post in future, and have a great day.